So we did Europe, we did Asia, and now we're doing Africa by countries by power. So basically, these are the powers of the continent. And yeah, we'll be going from they actually for our whole tiers from SS to H tier. Well, I doubt there will be any SS tier countries, but yeah, H tier countries there'll probably be many. And no, that's because the country has a big population, i.e. DR Congo, does not make them a power. We'll also be factoring in GDP and how poor the country is, and the military and everything else. So the first country on the list is Algeria. Algeria is pretty reasonably powerful, and the North African countries are basically the most powerful countries on the continent, besides South Africa and Nigeria. So yeah, they have Algeria. They are one of the more influential countries on the continent. Next is Angola. Angola is B tier. They have a lot. They have oil, which makes them higher than most countries in the continent. Considering there's so many tiers, I can put them in C tier. Next is Benin. Benin. It's a small country. It doesn't have a lot of land area. Its neighbors are much more powerful than it, so it's an E tier country. Botswana is one of the most peaceful countries in the world, but it does border South Africa, where South Africa is much far more powerful than it. But considering it's the Switzerland of Africa, but the difference between Switzerland and this country is that this country is a flat desert, so it's E tier. Burkina Faso is another pretty small country. It's basically a bunch of jungle, and 18 million people live here. And yeah, this country is not really that made in terms of powerhouse. But Burundi, yeah, Burundi is like the weakest country in Africa. No, no, one of the weakest. So it's GTL. Next is Cameroon. Cameroon is a very strategic area, in the continent. They do border Nigeria, which is the country's biggest problem. So the DTL. Cabo Verde is just an island, a bunch of islands off the coast of Senegal. So it's GTL. Central African Republic, the first bottom tier country, is probably the weakest country, one of the weakest and most unstable countries in the world. Central African Republic, it's just all you have to do is just do a coup in that country. They fall, they lose. Chad, we all know Chad. They're Chads, okay. They're Chads. Okay, done with the jokes, but yeah, Chad is a random country, which makes it even worse, like Burkina Faso and Botswana, and Burundi, which are all random countries. Chad is a random country, most of its land is Sahara Desert, so yeah, it's F tier country. Comoros, yep, same reason as this country here, is D tier, because there's a bunch of islands. They actually lost to France pretty recently, too. Next is the Republic of Congo. They only have 5 million people, but considering that's as strong as their neighbor, the DR Congo, despite having way more people because of how unstable its neighbor is, I'm gonna put it in DTL. Next country is DR Congo. Yep. The only thing going for this country is its population, so it's FTL country. Next is the Ivory Coast. The Ivory Coast has been improving. The C tier country. They're around Angola level. Next is Djibouti. Djibouti has a very great strategic location. The neighbors are not exactly besides Ethiopia are not exactly powerhouses. So they're a C tier country. Next is Egypt. Egypt is an S tier country in Africa. They are one of the most powerful. I don't think there's gonna be any SS tier countries in Africa. That is a God tier country, which only like America and China fall into. So yeah, for Egypt is considered to be a regional power in Africa. They have the Suez Canal. They have a lot of people, and they have a slightly stable government in Africa, which is actually pretty good for the continent. Next is Equatorial Guinea. The ZTO. They have a lot of money, but having a lot of money and not giving it to the citizens is one thing. Eritrea is basically like North Korea. They have a large military force and they are that's like North Korea. But they're just as poor as North Korea and they have way less people. F tier country. Ethiopia. Even though Ethiopia might be, besides Switzerland, Ethiopia might be the most powerful landlocked country in the entire world. They have the leaders of the African, union thing. They also were the only country to survive colonization besides Liberia, with the help of America. And even though they don't really have a big GDP per capita, that's because they have a lot of people. But Ethiopia is one of the more important countries in Africa and the continent as a whole. Gabon. Gabon is a very rich country. It's unlike, Equatorial Guinea, so it is a C tier country. The Gambia is just a river. It is bottom tier. It's just a river like a million people. Ghana. Ghana has been improving in the years. It is not going to be a regional power in Africa, considering that it's in West Africa and there's much more powerful countries. But it is not the weakest. Guinea-Bissau is just a small country. It doesn't even only has around 1 million people. It's pretty weak. Not a strong country. Next is Mali. That's the next country. No wait, Mali is not the next country. Whatever this country is. Oh wait, this is Guinea, not Guinea. Yeah, Guinea-Bissau then Guinea. Guinea is a F tier country. It isn't very powerful. It doesn't really have a lot of people. Kenya is a country that has been improving. It's not as powerful as its neighbors, but it's definitely more powerful than Somalia. But yeah, East Africa is becoming, and especially with East African Federation, it's good. That becomes a country. Yep, Kenya has been improving. Lesotho, a tiny country surrounded by South Africa, very weak. Liberia, known for being one of the worst countries in Africa, so it's G tier. Libya, unstable, worst country in the North African region, so it's G tier. Madagascar, it is an island. The only war they really lost was against the France, and if another country in Africa decides to invade this place, if it's an outside force, yeah, they'll lose, so they'll beat CTL. Malawi, yeah, it's just a small country by a lot. Like, it's not very strong. Oh, now this is Maui. Maui is a landlocked country. Landlocked countries are not very strong. We already gone over this thousands of times that landlocked countries are not very great. So yeah, it's a G tier country. Mauritania, it does have a coastline, but it is mostly just desert. So actually, Maui will be ranked F tier. Next is Mauritius. Mauritius will be E tier. It's just an island, but like Botswana, it's very peaceful. Next is Morocco. Morocco is, in terms of powers in Africa, it is pretty strong. Probably tied with Algeria and ATL. Next is Mozambique. Mozambique isn't, a powerhouse either, but it is a E-tier country. It is overshadowed by South Africa in every way. But it's like the next country on this list, Namibia. Namibia is pretty peaceful, so it is going with Botswana. It doesn't have a lot of people. It's just mostly desert. Next country is Nigeria. Nigeria is considered to be a regional power, just like, you know, Algeria has one of the biggest economies in Africa. It is pretty poor compared to Egypt, but does have one of the biggest economies, mostly due to oil and the continent. They're saying that this country will be one of the biggest economies in Africa, and not only in Africa but in the world, with Egypt. Next is Niger. Niger ranks worst in the UN Development Index, and it's also landlocked and extremely poor. So it is 8 tier. Yeah, landlocked countries usually have the disadvantage. Rwanda is poor and but it is improving in its economy and it's landlocked, so it's F tier, higher than Burundi. Sao Tome and Principe to an island by Nigeria. Nope, H tier, because we're ranking this by power, not by how great the country is. Senegal. Senegal is a very reasonable power. They are E tier. Next is Seychelles, another island. Seychelles, in terms of Human Development Index, will be ranked the highest. But again, it is just an island. An island is not really, doesn't have 60 million people. Next is Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone isn't exactly a powerhouse either. It is F tier. Somalia is H tier because of unstable government. Same thing with South Sudan. I'm gonna get that one out of the way. West Sahara is just they're almost controlled by Morocco, sort of H tier country. South Africa South Africa has been unstable pretty recently with its government, but yeah, it is one of the regional powers in Africa, so it is A tier. But if the country's government was more stable, it is one of the most dangerous crime-ridden countries in Africa. But I won't be surprised if other countries in Africa are underreporting the crime. I'm just gonna put it in S tier because it is still. But again, it's we're way with Algeria and Morocco. They're still decent, tier. Sudan is a D tier country. it isn't exactly as powerful as Egypt and always is overshadowed by Egypt and Ethiopia. It is kind of like the middleman of Africa. Eswatini, landlocked, surrounded by two other countries. Yep, bottom tier material right there. Next is next is Tanzania. Tanzania does have a pretty is gonna become one of the more populated countries in Africa in the future, and it also has very important coastal cities. So it's C tier. It's not as great as those two other countries above it. Next is Togo, another very small country in Africa. A lot of countries in Africa are pretty small and pretty, minute. And yeah, Togo is not really a strong country. Tunisia is a pretty peaceful country, but isn't, really as strong as its neighbors is. It will still hold its own, against other countries, but yeah, it's CTO. Next is Uganda. Uganda is landlocked. It does have a lot of people. It doesn't really have a big economy, so it's an F tier country. Zambia, it has one of the ugliest flags in the world. It's also landlocked as well, which is a problem with both African countries. And Zimbabwe, well, it's Zimbabwe, so it's A tier because Zimbabwe has tried to improve, but Zimbabwe has a really bad economy, which is caused by Mugabe's, caused by the previous leader, and yeah, they're still trying to recover from the mess that this country is, and also it's landlocked, so yeah, any landlocked country is doing worse. So what did you learn from this video? That landlocked countries, with the exception of Ethiopia, are pretty bad. You don't want your country to be landlocked because you will have no coast. That's basically it. Goodbye.